So again, welcome to Leadenhall Library. I'd like to welcome our Deputy First Minister, Emma Little-Pengelly, and all of our other distinguished guests, many of whom you will hear from later and will be introduced to you then. So welcome to the launch of the Leadenhall's Ending Violence Against Women and Girls exhibition. We're delighted to be launching this exhibition now in Women's History Month and the run-up today to International Women's Day. In 2025, Belfast City Council awarded funding to the Leadenhall and to a host of other organisations to support the Northern Ireland Executive to deliver its Ending Violence Against Women and Girls strategy. Ending all forms of violence, abuse and harm against women and girls is one of the most pressing challenges facing us today. It's a priority for the Executive, which I'm sure Emma will go tell us about, and also a priority at Westminster. The Executive Office has a strategic framework regarding ending violence against women and girls, and the vision is to change society where women and girls are free from all forms of gender-based violence, abuse and harm, including the attitudes, systems and structural inequalities that cause them. I personally walked around the exhibition for the first time earlier this morning and was really moved by the creative responses done by many people in this room. I saw the issues through the prism, I suppose, of art collections as well, and the library and artistic workshops that were carried out here. My reaction to it was absolutely wow, and this exhibition will remain with me for a long time. We have exhibitions here all the time, and there's always one a year that really strikes a chord, and I think, well, I know we're only in March, but this one's really struck a chord with me. Over the last number of years, we at the Leadenhall have not been afraid to tackle serious issues which can be linked back to our collections, and all of our work is absolutely linked back to our collections, but shows the relevance of us as a shared space and as an important cultural institution in Northern Ireland. I know Samantha and Patsy will be focusing more on the methodology in this project, and I'd like to thank both of them for their extremely hard work and dedication to this project. I know they'll thank everyone else, but I want the opportunity to thank them here and now as well. The other speakers will tell you more about the parts they've played, so I'm certainly not going to duplicate that or attempt to speak for them. I would now like to thank the Deputy First Minister, Emma Little-Pengelly, for coming today, and I'd ask her to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. It's a real honour to join with you and to receive the invitation from Julie and the library to come along this morning at the launch of this really significant exhibition. Today, this week is International Women's Week. I know we refer to it as International Women's Day, but the reality now is there's so many different wonderful events on that we get the opportunity to go out and to champion women and to talk about so much of the incredible work of women across all sectors. Just this week, both the First Minister and myself had the opportunity to attend a number of those events where we've been able to take the platform to shine a light on the incredible work of women in many, many different sectors, in the arts, in sport, in the community, voluntary and charity sector, in business and in politics. And it's such joy to be able to do so. But I think it's actually really appropriate that in this week as well, we're talking about the issue that is the focus of this exhibition, and that is the absolutely appalling violence against women and girls all over the globe, of course, but particularly in terms of our strategy and delivery plan here in Northern Ireland. When I go to events, and there'll be many events supported through the work of Ending Violence Against Women and Girls team, I often say that we have appalling levels of violence against women and girls in Northern Ireland. And that doesn't always sit right with me, because while we can refer to appalling levels, the reality is no level is the correct level. We can say that it is too high, but if a single girl or woman experiences that is too much. And that is why at the heart of the strategy is that drive towards the elimination of violence against women and girls. But as Julie has rightfully said, it is not just the act itself, it is the attitudes, it's the culture, societal values that all can lead to the space where people are suffering from that violence in their lives. We also know it is an issue that brings together everyone throughout Northern Ireland. It doesn't matter what your politics is, what your background is, how much money you have in the bank, or what your social class or socioeconomic background is. We know that if you are in poverty, it can be compounded in that way. That is why that is a particular issue within the strategy. But we know that this touches on absolutely everyone, and that is why we need to pull together in all the many different aspects of the work that we do, and particularly through our local councils. We took the view that our local councils would be able to identify many good projects within the area, but making sure that we have that really good spread in terms of rural and urban and all parts, bringing in all organisations. I had the opportunity, as I arrived here, Julie very kindly showed me around some of the exhibition, and I'm really looking forward to hearing a little bit more about the background and the inspiration behind that. I think this is such an excellent and innovative response to the call for projects. It brings together some of what you had in your collection, but you are reimagining that, you're using that to challenge and to get a creative response, and those responses, I have no doubt, will be a hugely powerful exhibition for those coming to see it. When I stand up and talk in front of a crowd that includes poets and writers and creative types, I'm always very acutely aware of my lack of skill in terms of how I articulate. But one of the things that really struck me about this exhibition is the incredibly innovative use of art as a way to perhaps create an emotion or a response that just simple words or a document or a delivery plan or our advertising campaign can do. We all know, I don't need to tell any of you in the room here today, that art can invoke those reactions. It's an incredible way of getting people to think differently. It is an incredible way of getting people to confront themselves and their emotions and their experiences as well. And there's no doubt, as I walked throughout that exhibition, you have undoubtedly those emotions. Some of it is really difficult to look at because, and of course it ought to be, because this issue is a very difficult issue. It's an issue that, as we know, for far too long was not spoken about. It was pushed into the shadows. People found it really difficult to have those conversations and to get that right support, and that is why a huge part of our strategy of ending violence against women and girls is around getting this conversation out into the open. It is about confronting those societal attitudes that have given rise to many generations of misery and pain and hurt and hidden agony that so many people have suffered over that time. The care and the craft that we've seen already today, no doubt we will hear from the contributors, demonstrates your commitment to playing your part. One of the things that we absolutely recognised around this strategy was that we cannot get this societal change just simply from a government top-down policy agenda. Whenever I came into this post as Deputy First Minister, one of the very first conversations that I had with the First Minister, Michelle O'Neill, was around our determination to try to move this on. I find the levels of violence against women and girls in Northern Ireland just deeply shaming on all of us in terms of what we're trying to do. And I also recognise that we have had so many incredible people who have been campaigning on these issues for many decades as well. And that is why we were determined to have that game changer in relation to bringing forward this strategy, and indeed not just the strategy but with the funding and with the delivery plan coming behind that. But importantly, this was really the first strategy from government that was put together through genuine collaborative design and co-production, and that was getting all of the people in the room, from people who have experienced that violence themselves to organisations that have worked in the sector, the key statutory agencies and others that would be and have a key responsibility in driving forward the actions under our strategy. And so many of those people give of their time. I'm not sure some of you may be in the room even today, but give of their time freely to contribute to that strategy. And I have no doubt that the strategy and the framework is all the better because of that contribution. Getting that lived experience, getting the expertise, and having a strategy that is not just produced collectively, but that is owned by all of us. And we all, and let me be very clear, I know that we all have such an important role to play in trying to drive forward that change. It is about supporting those who are in crisis right now. It is about working with those people who are undergoing that violence or identifying perpetrators, and many of our actions deal with that. But at the heart of this strategy is prevention. It is about getting in early. It is about reaching all of those parts and organisations and people and sectors, because, let's face it, the victims of violence against women and girls and those who advocate on their behalf will never be able to resolve this issue we need to get at the very heart of those who perpetrate it as well. And that's why I'm really glad that we've had sporting organisations, organisations that are predominantly male, organisations with boys, schools, youth clubs, and as well, and I'm really pleased to see our organisations in the arts space playing your role as well. I know that the Linen Hall Library here has played such a hugely significant role in the landscape and history and heritage of Northern Ireland thus far. Your exhibitions are always deeply thought-provoking. I thank all of you that have contributed to this one. I do believe that this will stand out as a particularly confronting exhibition, and as people go through that, you will never know the emotions that it speaks to when they look and they see perhaps their own experience reflected back to them, but also the change that hopefully will bring to those who visit and attend your exhibition. So thank you for all of your hard work. I have no doubt that this exhibition will be a huge success. Thank you for your contribution. This is never going to be a quick fix, we know that, but what we need to do is to work collectively together to really bring about that change and to finally stamp out and to eliminate violence against women and girls in every part of Northern Ireland. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone, my name is Patsy Horton and I am the Arts and Cultural Programmer here at the Linen Hall. I'd like to welcome you all here today, and I'd especially like to welcome the students from Belfast School of Art. You are here in numbers and it is fantastic to see you, and you were coming to the library for a number of weeks, and it was wonderful to work with you across that time, so thank you for your continuing support for the project, and I'm looking forward to hopefully getting a chat with you after the event. And also a special welcome to our 3 artists who were commissioned to respond to Ursula Burke's Sculpture House: Heather Fleming, Maria McManus and Dawn Watson. When we applied for the funding from Belfast City Council, a key consideration for us was how the Linen Hall could uniquely contribute to the delivery of the Ending Violence Against Women and Girls strategy. The first answer to that question was that we knew that we had incredible and unique archives that speak powerfully to the lived experience of women and girls in Northern Ireland. And we knew, unfortunately, that violence in its many ugly forms was a key part of that experience. And I'm so pleased that Samantha McComb, our librarian, who has lived and breathed and nurtured this project alongside me, will be here on the stage shortly to talk about those unique archives and how we've used them. We were also conscious when we were thinking about the Linen Hall's contribution of this historic building, of our city centre location, of the fact that this library, museum and archive is a shared inclusive space. And we knew that the Linen Hall was a space in which difficult conversations could happen, conversations around women, violence against women and girls. And we knew that through our archives and exhibition space, we could make that a public conversation, that through that the exhibition would would mean that anyone who came into the building would engage with the issue of ending violence against women and girls. And I'm delighted, I think anybody coming into this building would absolutely, as the Deputy First Minister said, engage with that issue, and it's very heartening and welcome to hear her response to what she has seen already. We also knew, as we put that application forward, that we wanted to work with young people, that young people are potentially the most vulnerable group in our society, and they offer the possibility for change. We wanted to harness the power of art, of poetry, of books, of the visual arts, to tell stories, to create empathy, to change attitudes. And those threads are woven through this exhibition, which is being launched today and which runs until the 27th of March. There are 3 strands within the exhibition. The first strand is centred around the Sculpture House after Louise Bourgeois by Irish artist Ursula Burke, and that sculpture is part of the Linen Hall's collections. Visual artist and writer Heather Fleming, poet Maria McManus and poet Don Watson were all commissioned to produce new work inspired by that sculpture. The second strand involved a module of work with illustration students, first years, third years and graduates and residents from Belfast School of Art, who were invited to produce work in response to the Ursula Burke sculpture and the Linen Hall's political collection and Extraordinary Women archives. The final strand of the project focused on Wendy Erskine's book, The Benefactors, a brilliant book, very much a Belfast book, which has at its heart a sexual assault. And we held 2 workshops with schools that included a discussion with Wendy herself and the creation of accordion zines that were facilitated by Rebecca Lively and that grew out of that discussion and are part of the exhibition. Finally, as you get the chance to go around the exhibition, as you tell your friends about it and other people and tell them that they have to come to this exhibition, we want them to be considering 3 questions. What constitutes violence against women and girls, and what forms does that violence take? Why do men and boys perpetrate violence against women and girls? And what does a healthy relationship between men and women look like? I'd like to hand you over now to our librarian, Samantha McComb, to talk about our archives and the project in more detail.
Good afternoon. I am Samantha McComb. I am the librarian at the Linen Hall, and I add my welcome to you all. Thank you so much for being with us. We are very grateful. And very quickly, the Belfast Library and Society for Promoting Knowledge, known more commonly as the Linen Hall, developed from the Belfast Reading Society, which was founded on the 13th of May 1788. It is the oldest library in Belfast, last subscription library in Ireland. Freely accessible, right in the heart of the city. The poet Michael Longley described it as the soul of Belfast, while Seamus Heaney said in our cultural and our historical understanding, the very words the Linen Hall Library represent not just books, but better hopes for the way we live, for a just, civilised and inclusive society. It is renowned locally, nationally and internationally for its unique collections which reflect our rich cultural heritage. And as well as a library and archive, the Linen Hall is also an accredited museum. Multifaceted, wonderfully eccentric, means different things to different people, and it engenders great loyalty and lifelong affiliation. It is literally crammed full of knowledge and alive with history. And the Linen Hall's history and collections is intrinsically linked to the story of Belfast and beyond. And the library has a pivotal role to play in understanding all of Northern Ireland's past, not least through our political collection. Started in 1968 by the Lynn librarian Jimmy Fiddy. He was handed a civil rights leaflet in a city centre bar. He kept it, brought it back to the library, and today the political collection contains over 350,000 items, documenting from the emergence of the civil rights movement through the peace process to our society today. And as Julie and Patsy have both said, the Linen Hall has always been a shared space. The independence of the library is beneficial in this sense, which has engendered trust, and we are proud of our reputation as a welcoming and inclusive space. We work hard to ensure everyone has an authentic and enriching experience. And in relation to the political collection, there's no bias. All shades of opinion are represented, reflecting our ethos to collect without fear or favour. There's no judgment. We collect and we let the collections speak for themselves, and there is no censorship. And as we continue to collect and promote the idea of contemporary collecting and living archives, the collections and archives have great relevance and significance to today's societal challenges. And this is where our community engagement is vital. And we have in recent years undertaken several collections-based projects which connect the rare and unique archives and collections we hold with communities to explore together the issues, challenges and opportunities of the past, present and future. There is a wealth of material in our collections by and about women, and the women's stories within these were waiting to be explored. So our Extraordinary Women project examined roles and attitudes of women in Northern Ireland during a momentous period of recent history and political and socio-economic change and development. It utilised culturally and historically significant collections, including political, literary and theatre, with an emphasis on our Traveller collection and LGBTQ+ archives, to elucidate and celebrate the lived experience of women by digitally preserving and making accessible unique materials such as posters which illustrate women's experiences, periodicals, community newsletters which shine a light on women's issues, pamphlets which go beyond the factual to give real insight, and ephemera which illustrates the issues and challenges of the times, and incredible objects and artefacts which speak to the project themes. The groups that we met with articulated a particular appetite for a project around women collaborating and working together, finding commonality, especially during a divisive period, instances of activism in response to momentous times, and women supporting and raising each other up. The collections at the Linen Hall facilitated a community-driven engagement programme to curate insightful exhibitions enlightening oral reminiscence and the essential capture of responses to contemporary issues affecting women of all generations in Northern Ireland. And it was not only timely but overdue that there was an emphasis on the Traveller collection and LGBTQ+ archives. And you know, the themes and subject matters which emerged during that project, especially during engagement in oral histories, were often challenging and difficult. The authenticity and honesty of the project participants was incredible. The remarkable insights and trust we were shown with women's stories was humbling. And since we have felt the weight and responsibility of honouring that trust by continuing to explore issues affecting women. And a very strong thread which emerged during the project was domestic abuse. And we were very grateful to be able to acquire a piece by the artist Ursula Burke, which spoke to this and became a motif for the project. Creative responses really are powerful means of exploring the challenges of society. Ursula Burke is an Irish artist who works within the discipline of sculpture. She uses a variety of media, including porcelain sculpture, embroidery, drawing and photography. Much of her fine art practice deals with issues of representation and identity within contemporary Ireland, north and south of the border. She works with the personal and political in Irish society using multiple points of departure. The piece in question is House After Louise Bourgeois, is inspired by drawings by artist Louise Bourgeois, who is a French-American artist best known for her large-scale sculpture and installation art, and as a prolific painter and printmaker. She explored a variety of themes over the course of her long career, including domesticity and the family, sexuality in the body, as well as death and the unconscious. Ursula Burke has described her piece as follows: the female figure physically and psychologically wears the house as her head. She becomes the house. The work makes reference to the role of women within Northern Irish society throughout the Troubles. Her arm bears a wound, and her hands and feet have been immersed in the soil. This piece seeks to reinsert women back into the history of the conflict. And it also celebrates Ursula Burke's distinctive style and techniques. And when we met with Ursula, she discussed how something so tiny, but yet so loud, could have such an impact on the viewer. The attraction of small decorative objects harks back to cabinets of curiosity with porcelain figurines, and at first glance this small ornate object, which are usually aesthetically beautiful, delicate and passive, is inverted by giving the piece message with small details revealing social comment. And as has been mentioned, Linen Hall has always been a place for difficult conversations to be had in the right way, and when we came to think about how we could support the Ending Violence Against Women and Girls strategy, we took the experience of Extraordinary Women and the Ursula Burke piece as our guide. Violence against women and girls is a systemic societal challenge. It is overwhelming and relentless. Our anger, disbelief and outrage worn down by the sheer magnitude. So what did we do? We look to our archives and to our artists, poets and writers to help us try and make sense. Wendy Erskine, Heather Fleming, Maria McManus, John Watson, your creativity, your empathy has turned the ugly into something beautiful, magical and powerful. And we hoped for generational shifts, so we looked to our young people. Wendy Erskine led incredible sessions around her novel The Benefactors with pupils from Royal Belfast Academical Institute and Dominican College, Fort William. The young people's considered reflections, insights and honesty were inspiring. Their outputs from the collage scene workshop with Belfast School of Art graduate and residents Rebecca Lively are on display up on level 4. Thank you, Wendy, Rebecca, teachers Kerry and Kathy, and the young men and women of the 2 schools to whom they are a credit. They would have loved to have been with us today, but exam preparation precludes. The teachers have sent us a few words. Kerry Ferment said, a particularly insightful aspect of the workshop was the opportunity to hear the voices of young men in relation to the issue of violence towards women, creating a space for open exploration and discussion through a creative framework allowed participants the context needed to examine the issue thoughtfully, while also offering a meaningful outlet for expression. Kathy from Fort William said, we are deeply grateful to the Linen Library providing such a valuable educational experience. The project enriched our students' understanding of contemporary social issues, encouraged critical and compassionate dialogue, and empowered them to see themselves as advocates for positive change. We are indebted to Belfast School of Art's illustration course, tutors Jonathan Cummings, Conor McClure, the first year students, the final year students, and the graduates in residence for standing together to explore this issue. In response to curated items from our political collection and Extraordinary Women archive, including some of the posters and objects and artefacts which sit alongside the students' work in the exhibition, and the oral histories collected during the Extraordinary Women project, hearing and taking inspiration from Dawn, Heather and Maria about their commissioned works and creative process, a hard-hitting but very necessary presentation from Helen Russell of Women's Aid, and an embroidery workshop with Ursula Burke, where she shared insights from her practice. The students have produced incredible work. We are so grateful for your care and consideration, for not looking away, for sitting with the uncomfortable, for helping and supporting each other, and for spotlighting this issue in such a unique and powerful way. We are incredibly proud of you, and I know everyone will be blown away by what you have produced, which we will add to our archives, and our archives will be enriched as a result. Thank you all. My final thanks are to our arts and cultural programmer, Patsy Horton, who has given her whole self to this project, ensuring through her care and compassion the authenticity and integrity of what has been achieved. Thank you, Patsy. And I echo the thanks for the funding from Belfast City Council. I think this is one of the best examples of how archives and collections have the unique capacity to spark creativity, to encourage necessary conversations, to produce ripple effects, to make real and positive change. And it is my pleasure to introduce our next set of speakers. Firstly, we will hear from poet and writer Dawn Watson. Dawn will be sharing her piece, Instructions, at the end. Brian Dixon, head of Belfast School of Art, is then going to join us. Brian and Rebecca Lively will share their perspectives of the collaboration with the Linen Hall and talk about the students' work. Next, artist and poet Heather Fleming will talk to us about her commissioned artwork, Remains, before poet Maria McManus shares her poem, The Footling Breach. So please join me in welcoming Dawn Watson.
Hello. God, it's lovely to see such a full room. Yes, my name is Dawn Watson, and I'm a poet and a lecturer at the Seamus Heaney Centre at Queen's, where I teach creative writing. Yes. So a few years ago I wrote a book called We Play Here that was set in North Belfast in the 80s, in a working class community where I grew up. High levels of poverty. It was my first attempt, and I was in my 40s, my first attempt to sort of address, I think, the way I grew up, the place I grew up, and that experience of violence against women and girls in Northern Ireland. I was just going to read, just to start with, a tiny, tiny quote. 2 women at a bus stop. A woman at the bus stop shouted over the road to a woman behind us. "Any more shout out of your man, Linda?" She said, "I made myself small, Jackie. You know yourself." In the way that I feel fish live in water, women and girls have always existed in these kind of structures of violence, physically, psychologically, inside the home, but also outside of it in the wider fabric of communities, in the very words and language that we use, which can be gendered and specific to us as women and girls. And because these structures, I think, of violence are so normal, many women, I think, struggle to talk about them to begin with. I know I did. Typically women hold families together. So to speak up against, perpetrators of violence is going to risk going against sort of social expectations of what the woman does and her role as a holder together. So it's one of the reasons why exhibitions like this, which invites women to speak, is so important. I'm so moved by the student artwork in the hallways. Well done. It's brilliant. I'm grateful as well to the amazing Patsy Horton and the organisers here at the Linen Hall. They've been invited to take part and to write a poem. So poems are about more than one thing. At least the best ones are. So on the one hand, of course, this poem responds to Ursula's powerful artwork, and if you haven't seen it, it's out in the case outside. It's a woman sitting and she's locked inside a house. So on the one hand it speaks to that, but on the other hand it's very personal and it speaks to that feeling of it just being the end of the world, feeling like it is, a feeling of being stuck, a feeling of being trapped without any obvious escape. How do we find the means to survive that? So this is instructions at the end, after House by Ursula Burke. And what of the house collapsed on my shoulders? Aren't there as many ways to survive inside, to endure like horsetails do, like the praying Calathea in the dump? Bombs strike where it's soft and bordered. You think if you show your bloody face with the cooker door bust, it will stop, but it doesn't. You are still here, alone on the mountain. It is what it is. Wait all night with a sharp stick. Take inventory of baseball bats, useful cutlery. Nail planks over doors. Dip hands and feet in gold. Pack Tibetan bells. Pack daughter you did not have. God knows, we make choices. Stock the pantry with kraut. Stock smokes. Activate alarm system made of bean can and rope. At the end of the world, cut hair into short fire. Once I survived falling from the sky, or I imagined I did. Like the robin with no beak, clung 3 days to a branch. It's this stupid way you hold your stupid mouth. Thank you.
I just want to follow on from a poem like that. Fantastic. So my name is Brian Dixon. I'm head of Belfast School of Art, and I think it's appropriate I'm the only male speaker on the list today. I'm going to be very succinct. I have, I suppose, a couple of key points I want to make, which mostly are to do with thanking individuals for the contribution they made, and then making a point around the value of this for our school and the pedagogies that we seek to instruct students in. The first thing to say that the context of women and girls and the concerns that I suppose focus on the issues that relate to women and girls are very prescient for the school. We have a majority female student body, actually 79%, and the issues, as are being alluded to both in the works, but equally in the conversations that I suppose have been raised, or conversation points that have been raised by the previous speakers, they are things that come to me with acute regularity in terms of, again, the issues faced by our student body and I suppose in their everyday lives, the challenges they face. And I want to acknowledge that as a direct concern that obviously Belfast School of Art has. I want to highlight how, in relation to the strategy and the initiatives you've undertaken in the strategy, I really want to commend Stormont for taking the approach that you've outlined in terms of being collaborative, seeking to involve stakeholders. That's an absolute commitment of us at the Belfast School of Art, and I think something that is really important in the context of policy making, so I think it's really important that that's acknowledged actually. And the work that's been undertaken here by the students also speaks to that. This for me is an example of a really high value partnership, a partnership that obviously speaks to the strengths of our students in terms of them being able to express insights that they have in relation to material, but equally connecting directly to what Michael Longley has called the soul of Belfast, which is right here on our doorstep. Having a project context to do that in is enlivening for the students and obviously allows us to tackle those issues with sensitivity and concern for those involved, but equally allows us to tell stories to the wider community, both in this city but more broadly in Northern Ireland. I want to acknowledge that as a really important feature of this. And time and again, both from our colleagues at the school, but equally from the students, I've heard really positive things about how that collaboration has worked. I want to highlight that in this context. I want to thank students for the sensitivity with which you've approached this subject. It is an absolutely very challenging subject, but as head of school, I'm really proud of the work that you've undertaken and what I've seen here today. I'd like to thank the lecturers for how they've approached this ethically. It's a really outstanding example of dealing with something that's really, really difficult to not only, I suppose, begin to address, but then, take into a form of expression which is so literally graphic, as the outcomes here are. I think that's been outstandingly handled. So I'd like to thank Connor and Jonathan for the work that they've undertaken there. The speaker who follows on from me is one of our students, so Rebecca Lively. Rebecca's a graduate in residence, and graduates in residence are students who have obviously graduated, but get some time in our studios to work with the students that are still studying and still enrolled in our programs, and in that to gain teaching experience, but also to continue their own work. And I think this project has provided Rebecca, who's about to speak, with an absolutely brilliant context in which to undertake that, and it brings together all aspects of the graduate and residence scheme. So not only is Rebecca doing her own work, but she's also working with students and she's engaging externally with civic partners, in this case obviously the Linden Hall Library. So I will turn over without any further labouring of points to Rebecca. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us here today. I'm Rebecca, I'm from the uni. I want to thank all the families here for supporting us in launching this project. I'd like to thank Patsy, Samantha and the Linden Hall for their support in such an important project. And I'd also like to thank the illustration team, Connor, Ronan, Jonathan, and my fellow graduates in residence, Neve and Ethan, for their tireless work in producing, curating and installing this exhibition. The topic of ending violence against women and girls it's a really tough one. Every single person in this room has a story connected to this topic. Whether it's your own story or it's a story of a loved one, everyone knows a woman who is feared for her safety in Northern Ireland, and that's not acceptable, and that needs to change. Illustration is all about telling stories in captivating ways to make change. It amplifies voices through heart-stopping visuals and changes mind through expertly selected text. What I love about our students' work is that every single person's voice shines through. Everyone has different ideas about what needs to be said to make change, and they have expressed them with such tact and skill. Some of our students have explored how the trauma relates to violence. and others explore how communities can work together to overcome this issue. The kaleidoscope of visual ideas here is the perfect introduction to the conversation we need to have about ending violence. To our first year and final year students and my fellow graduates and residents, thank you. You've created truly stunning artwork, and we're genuinely so proud of all that you've achieved. It's such an honour to exhibit alongside you all. My piece, Testimony, is the one on the big bed sheet. It acts as visual evidence of the trauma inflicted by sexual violence. Too often, women's experiences are disregarded because our evidence is not strong enough. But we carry the evidence in our bodies, in our souls, in the wounds that slowly heal, in the way that our entire lives change because of the violence we've experienced. Our evidence is the consequences of our assailants' actions. But ironically, most of our assailants will never face a single consequence for what they did to us. Instead, we're sort of expected to graciously move on with our lives and find some peace and meaning in it all, but I'm still angry. And there's almost a need to cling on to this anger and keep your wounds open, because it's sometimes the only evidence you have that that horrible thing did happen and that you're not lying or making it up. But you need to heal, and you deserve to heal. That's what this piece is for me. It's a way to inscribe the evidence while letting it go. It's healing without the denial. To end violence against women and girls, from my perspective, is to witness the impact of this violence and understand and commit to it never, ever happening, ever again. We must share our unique perspectives on how we can end this violence. Every single story must be told and must be heard for us to fully address this problem, including the invaluable stories from the archives. Ending violence against women and girls is a tough conversation, but it's one that we must have together in order to make Northern Ireland a safer place. Thank you for being here, and thank you for helping us make this change. Thank you.
Hello everybody. I was absolutely delighted to be offered this commission because the subject matter is so dear to my heart. Projects like this are needed now more than ever. Thank you, Patsy, and all at the Linen Hall who worked so hard to create such a great exhibition with valuable outreach work. I'll quickly share some thoughts with you about my motivation in accepting the commission, my thinking around the subject, and then a little bit about the piece of work that I made. In the very early 1980s, as a student at Queen's, I volunteered to drive the Queen's minibus to get women students home safely at night, because there were a lot of rapes and violent assaults in that area. There's actually a poster of the minibus service from that time as part of this exhibition. You might recognise the caricature of the driver. I was so pleased and astonished to see it again after so long. I attended Reclaim the Night marches in the very early 1980s, and I was at the recent one there last November, and I thought, why are we still having to do this? Things seem to have got worse now than ever. Socially and politically, things were really bad here in the 80s, but I think the difference was that there was a belief, a hope that things would change. Today, globally and locally, the statistics of violence against women and girls are horrific. Really, really shocking. I'd be here all day if I was to start listing statistics, but something to consider is, according to the World Health Organization, during the hour that we're going to be here together in this room today, at least 6 women globally will be murdered by their male partners. And that's just the official number. And that's just those who were actually murdered. I have to say, seeing the work the Belfast City Council is doing in support of the Northern Ireland Executive's Ending Violence Against Women and Girls strategy gives me hope for change locally. It's really brilliant work. I've noticed that many of the art pieces in this show use language, the written word, listing names that women are called and things like that. Language is powerful. Misogyny doesn't always come kicking the door down. It often enters with a little grin. Just a joke, dear. No harm intended. Sure, it's only a bit of banter, a bit of crack. Little everyday sexist jokes, comments and banter are some of the relentless micro-misogynies that create, normalise and nurture a culture for the bigger acts of violence to exist in. Micro here doesn't mean small or insignificant. It means constant and easy to deny. It's the background noise that keeps the system running and reinforces the idea that women and girls should tolerate being diminished. Every day I go out in the world, when I engage in social media or watch television, etc., I hear a level of sexism that would not be tolerated if it were sectarianism, racism, and so on. The artwork I made is entitled Remains. It's the wall piece with the ripped and unravelling red woolen dress and white plaster cast. On studying Ursula Burke's sculpture, House, I was struck by the small, barely noticeable bandage on the woman's arm. This was something that I wanted to amplify. In my piece, I used a real, life-sized casterplast. It speaks of brokenness, hurt, and pain, but also there's no longer an arm in the cast. We might assume there's been a healing. I didn't want the piece to be figurative as such. By just using a dress, it becomes more universal, indicating any woman, every woman, or the social construct of femininity. A deep red woolen dress, but unravelling, ripped, one that has been pulled apart, where boundaries have been broken. There's symbolism in the colours that I used as well, in the threads unravelling, etc. I don't want to talk too much more about it. I don't want to overly influence what you bring to the work yourself. And of course, I'll be very happy to chat with you afterwards if you have any questions or comments. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Patsy, Samantha and Julie, for inviting me to be part of this incredible project. And for I feel privileged to be in such good company with Dawn and Heather and yourself, Rebecca, as well. So thank you for that. Emma, yourself and Michelle O'Neill get a lot of bad press, and you're doing one of the toughest jobs or you're doing two of the toughest jobs in the country. I have no doubt of the fact that the very fact that you're women makes that more complex, but also I can tell you that you make a difference symbolically and practically and in profound ways. Keep going. I'm also aware that in the news at the moment there is the trial of relating to the murder of Natalie McNally, and I'm conscious also that in recent days people have been arrested in relation to the murder of Lisa Dorian, a murder that has been outstanding in terms of not having justice for at least 21 years, and it was her anniversary very recently. So there are many others. There's a long and wide continuum of violence and the nature of it, and we have collectively a tough job to do to unravel all of that, but the great prize is a better society for all of us, and all of us living to the better sides of ourselves in the longer term. The poem that I've written is called The Footling Breach, and it's an old term for a breech birth, which is where a baby is emerging from the woman feet first. It's the most precarious birth for a baby, it's the most precarious birth process for a woman. The stakes are extremely high. And when I looked at Ursula's sculpture, it really resonated with me with that metaphor, and that actually for any woman who is trying to escape a precarious and dangerous situation, the point at which she decides to leave is the most dangerous moment for her in terms of trying to escape that. So my poem is leaning into that very intimate domestic setting, and hope really that help will come from somewhere else, because this is a shame-filled topic. People feel incredibly vulnerable. The worst of incidents often happen in the dead of night, and there's so little help, so many ways in which people can be silenced. So this poem is in the voice of the woman in the sculpture, with her head trapped in the house, and it's called The Footling Breach. Enter this scene. My working kitchen, the scullery, a parlour, the good room. Within, the lights remain on, harsh and inquisitive, shadows darkening the red flags of this floor, the doors slammed shut and bolted from the outside. Listen. There are blackbirds singing in the ivy, but strange as it seems, I straddle the maw of two worlds. I am quarry, the familiar, the peculiar, a footling breach, both here and there, in the present and the past. Bruises blush beneath the cuff of gauze around my limb, blossoming like slander, the absolute touts. I carry this house like a snare, my ears ringing, white noise crackling like static, and grim news on the radio. Sometimes I cannot remember my own name. That said, I am feral too, surviving on morsels dropped from the table and on all that has been swept beneath each carpet's edge. I trust the midwife will arrive in time. I trust she'll bring the flying squad, her black bag, tea, warm water, towels, clean sheets. Cheers. Well, thank you so much to everyone here today. Thank you to the Deputy First Minister. Thank you to representatives from the Executive Office and from Belfast City Council. Thank you so much to our speakers today. My heart is full, as it has been throughout this project, in working with people who bring such a sense of responsibility and risk and sharing of themselves, and it has been a wonderful project to be part of, and there's more work to do. We take a breath, we have the achievement of this exhibition, and we press on because there's more to do. Thank you so much for your time. The exhibition runs until the 27th of March, and there are lots of things. There are great videos there of the poets reading their work or talking about the artwork that they produced, and yeah, thank you so much to everyone. Thank you.